Okay, well, it's bang on 8 o'clock. And as you can see, I've just tweeted out that I've gone live. So we're probably gonna keep that up there. I just want to make sure the audio is okay before we crack on.
Okay. Well,
Yep, that all seems fine. Right, welcome back. So, or if you haven't tuned into a live stream before, this is my second one. The first one, we're going to go back and we're going to cover what I did in the first stream. It'll take a few minutes. And then in this live stream, what we're going to do is, well, we're actually going to live stream some data in this live stream. So we've got event hubs, we've got serverless SQL pools, and we've got streaming analytics. So we're going to send some telemetry data to an event hub, and then streaming analytics is going to go and grab that data from that event hub, and it's going to save that to the data lake. And as it's streaming into the data lake, we'll also be able to read it using serverless SQL pools. Now the last stream was around an hour long. I think it was well over an hour long. So I think we'll probably keep it a little shorter this time. And because I've got a plan for one after this that involves Delta Lake, taking Parquet and actually transforming that into the Delta Lake format. So let's get cracking now and do a bit of a recap what we did last time, and then we'll go into what we're going to do this time, which is the streaming. And again, it's a live stream. It's supposed to be relaxed, not scripted. I do have some points that I want to get through. But it's more just to build something. Yeah, just relax and get hold of some technology and just build a data processing pipeline. Okay, so we've got Synapse Studio open, and the first thing we'll do is recap what we did last time. Okay, so it all starts with pipelines. So I'm going to go into my stream pipeline, and I've got pipeline load data lake. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just zoom the whole browser in. Very simple pipeline. Okay, so we've got a lookup activity that is connecting to an Azure SQL database, and it's just getting a list of tables in a specific schema. Okay, so I'm going to preview some data, and you can see I've got schema name and the table name. So this is the data that I would like to export from my Azure SQL database into the data lake. So once I've got my list of tables that I want to export, I've got a for each loop. We look at the activities in that for each loop. So essentially for each table in my Azure SQL database that I want to export, I've got two tasks. I've got a copy data task. So what I'm doing is I'm connecting to the source Azure SQL database, and I'm just going to extract everything from the table based on the schema name and the table name. Yeah, so for example, if I click preview data, right, I can say, right, okay, sales LT, and we'll say, I think it's product, not products. Okay, run that preview. There we go, got some data from that SQL database. So all it's really doing is connecting to that SQL database and passing in the schema name and the table name, and it's just going to get all the rows from the database. Okay. The sink, which is the data lake, is being driven by the parameters passed in from that lookup SQL tables to export. So essentially the same table name is being used for extracting the data from the SQL database, but it's also being used as the name of the folder in the data lake. Now I changed this since the stream, okay, because I added two things. Yeah, so I want to cover those. I want to cover those very quickly. I had a stored procedure that was in the Serverless SQL Pools database, which you passed in the name of the folder, or the name of the table rather, and it would just run a bit of dynamic SQL to create a view in the Serverless SQL Pools database over that source data that's just been exported in the data lake. I changed it to use the new script task. And one of the reasons that I wanted to change it and use the script task is because, I mean, it's okay, it's fine using, you know, a stored procedure, okay, encapsulate the logic, you've got dynamic SQL, that's fine. However, with the script component, I don't have to use dynamic SQL. What I can do is parameterize the query. Okay, so I've got two options here. I've got query and non-query on this, you know, create views, and essentially query is about returning rows, I believe. Yeah, because it says here database statements that return one or more result sets. I don't want to do that here because I'm creating objects in the Serverless SQL Pools database. Okay, so I could actually drive the creation of the views using the parameters in the pipeline. Okay, so I've got the table name. Yeah, so every time it loops and exports the data, it'll pass the table name into this statement and it'll just create or alter the view. I've actually got a central parameter for the data lake path that is used, you know, in both the export to the data lake, but also in this script component as well. So I could just change it once in the pipeline parameter and then just run it. And it really is as simple as that. Yeah. So I'm just going to go and loop through a list of tables in the SQL database, export the data, and then create or alter a view just automatically, so I don't have to go in and issue create view statements manually. So I'm just going to debug. Yeah, so let's just run the debug. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so live stream what we're doing now. The raw area in the data lake, and then this is my sales data. So we'll go back. Okay, so we've got some got the activities that they're exporting. I just set the for each. If I go into settings, I just set run everything at the same time. Okay, nothing else is happening on that SQL database really. Okay, so it's all succeeding. Let's have a look at the data itself. So we'll have a look in the storage. Got my live stream folder, got my raw folder, my sales data, and then I've got all my folders. Yep. So customer data, product data, sales data. Okay, all in there. If we go into, let's say we go into customer, then yeah, there we go. We've got Parquet. Okay, because I set the copy activity to export from the SQL database and save it as Parquet. Okay, So that's a recap of what we did last time. Other than the changes I made to that script, to add the script component and just get rid of that stored procedure activity. The other streaming video, that's what we did to create this process. Okay, so that was about an hour long that we went through doing that, and we created all the pipelines from scratch. Okay, so I've got my data from my SQL database. Now, in terms of the streaming data, okay, so I'm going to use an Azure Event Hub to post data to. Then I'm going to use Streaming Analytics to grab that data from the Event Hub and save it to the data lake as Parquet. So we're going to save it directly to the data lake as Parquet. Okay. Now I'm probably going to commit one of the cardinal sins of using Streaming Analytics, which is I'm not going to do really any processing on the data in the pipeline. I'm just interested in getting it from Event Hubs and storing it as Parquet in the data lake. So I've got a project in, and this is the link's in the description of the video, to one of the repos in GitHub, Power BI streaming data flows. Don't worry about the Power BI part. It's all part of a blog post in which I was testing out the Power BI data flows streaming functionality. But we've got a zip file here where if you download that, this is essentially the Visual Studio and Visual VS Code project if you want to generate your own telemetry. And essentially it's C# code that I took from one of the example pages in Microsoft documentation. So if we go into that now, so a lot of C# code, just setting variables, etc., etc. So what we're going to do is when we create that Event Hub, we're going to populate the values here, right? And then I'm just going to scroll down. What I'll do is let me just zoom it up. Okay, so this is all just about randomly generating some telemetry data. Okay, this is the part here. Okay, this is the part that I took from the Microsoft documentation. Okay, and that's essentially the sort of the basis of sending a message up to Azure Event Hubs. Okay, so I'm basically kind of spoofing devices sending telemetry into Azure Event Hubs. So let's go in, create an Event Hub now. Okay, so I'll go in, let's go back to the portal. There we go, we've got Event Hubs right there. Okay, create an Event Hub. And I'll create a new, so I'll say demo stream. Workspace name, I'll just say DHEV stream. I'll put that in the UK South, and I think we'll do just basic tier for now. So you can see the pricing there, so $11 per month. And we've got the available plans and features. I did actually use the standard tier when I was testing some Spark structured streaming, well, that's a bit of a mouthful, with Kafka. Yeah, so in Azure Databricks, essentially, using Python to initiate a connection to an Azure Event Hub, which was in the standard tier, which you could treat as a Kafka endpoint. We don't need that here. So we've got basic, no network connectivity, because I'll just destroy all this later on, and let's click create. While it's deploying the event hub, which is the endpoint to send our data to, let's create the streaming analytics service. Okay. So we're going to go into Stream Analytics Jobs, create a new Streaming Analytics job, DH demo stream. I'll go to my Azure subscription. We've got the demo stream resource group. Let's have a look for UK South. We use the least number of streaming units. Yeah, we'll generate a few thousand rows of telemetry. We're certainly not going to overload this streaming analytics job, and I'll create. Now, hopefully, we're going to click back into that tab and see that deployment's complete. Right. Let's go to our Event Hub namespace. And the first thing we want to do here is actually create an Event Hub within this Event Hub's namespace. So we'll say Event Hub, and we'll say DJ EV Hub Demo. Leave everything as default. It's standard, so we only get it's basic, so yeah, we don't get any more message retention other than 24 hours. I think capture is a standard feature as well. I'm not a fan of the format that capture sends the data to. Useful though for belts and braces saving. Okay, so we've got that Event Hub created. So to hook in our C# code to get some events posted, let's go into the Event Hub. Right, and we've got the shared access policies. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a policy. I'm just going to call it send policy. Okay, so this will just give permissions for that C# app to send data to the Event Hub. And what I've noticed in the past is that the policy doesn't seem to be like super instant in terms of allowing access. Okay, it's not a problem if it's going to be a couple of minutes. We'll just switch into Synapse and just do some example queries on that SQL data that we exported. But yeah, let's have a go. Let's see. Okay, I've got this connection string here. So I'm going to copy to clipboard, open up my C# app. Let's go back up and put that into the connection string. Now actually what I'm going to do is, you see at the end where I've got that entity path. So here. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that and put it into its own variable. So if I get rid of entity path, take that and put it into this variable. Okay, so it's the Event Hub name itself. Okay, so we've got the endpoint. It's like the full, the full string there. Endpoint equals SB. Yeah, we've got the policy name there and the key. So if we save it, okay, I'll run a build on that because I want to generate the exe, because I want to trigger the exe multiple times, and then let's do a .NET run. It will probably take a few seconds. Right, okay, there we go. Now, I know it's working and sending events to the Event Hub because when it connects successfully and it posts one line of the message, that'll be it. So it'll now just loop. Okay. What we'll do is, if I open up my command prompt, so I've already got the location to where I've just put the project. So I'm just going to start and trigger just loads. Yeah, let's go crazy. Let's just so we've just got loads and loads and loads of these windows, all sending some auto-generated web telemetry to the Event Hub. All right. Okay. So I'll just minimize that. So there you go. Okay. And so it sends, like a user ID, an event type of browsing product or putting that product in a basket. There should be one for purchasing the product as well. So it's essentially, funnel analysis. The percentage of people that browsed the product, put it in their basket, and bought it. We have the event date time. Okay, so that's generated by the app, by the C# app. We've got the product ID that the user browsed, the URL, the device that the user was browsing on. It's fairly simplistic here: PC, mobile, tablet, and the session view in seconds. How long they took to browse. So essentially, this could be telemetry generated by web servers. Whoops. All right, so we don't actually need to look at this stream of data anymore, because we're going to go back to the portal. And let's have a look. And there we go. Okay, so we can see some data streaming in. Okay, we've got some messages. Right. So we need to do something with those messages. So if I go back into the Stream Analytics job, let's set it up. Right, so I've got my input. So I'm going to add a stream input. Okay. There we go. Event Hub. So click that. Okay, so I'm going to be very simplistic with the namings here. So stream input, and then I can select the Event Hub. You've got Atlas there. That's the Event Hub that gets created when you provision Purview. Use an existing Event Hub name, Hub Demo, there we go. We've only got one default consumer group. I'll let the Streaming Analytics job add itself as a managed identity to the Event Hub to actually go and get the data. It's JSON. Yeah, it's a simple JSON format in the message that we're sending. There's no compression. So we'll save that. Now I do know that this does take maybe a minute or so to actually create the input. So I think what I can do is I can just create the output now while it's doing the input. So let's go back to the job. So in terms of an output, we want to put it into the data lake. You want to put it into our folder, well, basically the same raw folder that we put the, I'll close these, that we put the SQL data that was exported. Okay, so in terms of outputs, we'll add, oh wow, look at all of these. Blob storage, ADLS, Azure Data Lake Storage, Gen 2. Okay, and then stream output. I bet you guessed that right. Output. Okay, and I'll select my storage account. I've got my data lakehouse container. Again, when I create this output, I'll let the service add itself into the data lake storage blob data contributor role with this managed identity. Now with the path pattern, so this is how it's going to stream that data out and save. So I'm just going to go back into Synapse. And look at my streaming export, because I already created my location that I want to save my data to. But I'll talk through it. But I do have to add a new folder path. Okay, so I'm going to go back into my lakehouse. Okay, so I've got live stream, raw, and then I want the data saved in a web telemetry folder there. So we go back in, so live stream, raw, / web telemetry. So this is essentially syntax for the streaming analytics output. Now what I want to do is I want to create a 4-level folder structure that's driven by the event date value in that message. Yeah, so as you can imagine, I've got events streaming in. I want to save it to a year. Yeah, so I'm going to kind of pass that date time value as a year. The month, the date, and the hour as well. Yeah, so I'm going to get some files generated right down onto the hour. I could probably add a minute, but that's probably overkill for what we're doing here. But you can see that we can get quite granular in that streaming data that we're outputting. Right, so I'm just going to copy that into my path pattern. Now, I've got to be careful with the date format here. Okay, so I'm setting it to the correct date format. Year, month, day. That's actually quite important, because if I did have another date format with a /, then it actually does affect the path pattern, because it'll actually, if I'm outputting a date field, it'll then use the / as another folder path, right? So we've got year, month, day, and I want to select Parquet. Okay, so it was actually my SQL bits session where I crammed I crammed about an hour's worth of content into 20 minutes, which was far too rushed. I've got a blog with the slides actually, so this is almost kind of like the demo I was going to do, but in that one I outputted streaming analytics to CSV rather than just direct to Parquet, because I just wanted to, I wanted to show and compare and contrast the outputted values. And what was interesting was when you're trying to read those files in serverless SQL pools, you'd get an error, because as you're outputting data, the file is being written to, and serverless SQL pools actually wants to be like its older siblings, with consistency, transactional consistency, and it would actually see that the file was being written to and would error and say, sorry, I'm not reading this file because it's being written to. But you can actually overwrite that behavior in serverless SQL pools in the open row set command. Okay, so it'd be interesting to see if we get the same behavior with the Parquet file. Now, we want to see some instant results, so I'm not really interested in kind of batching up the files in too long a time period. Yeah, so we're going to set it to maximum a minute, minimum a couple of thousand rows. I guess for streaming, you'd want to keep those files light anyway, and it is the raw data as well. So we would look to transform that afterwards. So we save that. So while it's adding the output, let's have a look and see if it created the input successfully. Let's just refresh that. Okay. We're looking okay. We're looking okay. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to do a very, very simple query. Obviously, the power of streaming analytics, you've got a lot of windowing functions to calculate averages, moving averages over time as that data is coming through that pipeline. But just for now, we're going to keep it pretty simple. Okay, so we go into query, and all we're going to do, right, we're going to select all into. Okay, that's failed. All right. What we'll do is just, I've had an error before, and it actually hasn't been an error. So let's do stream input. Well, we know that the input's working because we've got some data here. Okay, we can have a look at the input preview. Okay. There we go. We've got a user, event type, date time, etc., etc. I click test that query. Does it test the output? Not sure. There we go. We've got our data types that it's picked up. Okay, let's save that query. So I am a bit concerned about the error message that we got around the output. But I'm going to click start anyway, and let's see, because I have had the occasional it can't connect error, but it's actually been okay. If not, then we'll go into the storage account and just add the managed identity of the streaming analytics job to the data lake folder. Okay, we're starting. Got a bug on my screen that wants to get involved. Right, there we go. Let's see if it's going to start. So in the meantime, let's just go into serverless. Okay. And we've got our SQL exported data. Okay. Now we automatically created views in that pipeline. Yeah. So actually, if I go into data, go into the workspace, expand my SQL database. I've got my data lake stream serverless SQL pools database that I created. And we've got our views. Okay. Now it's automatically generated those views in that pipeline, and it will have inferred the schema. So it's not going to be the most efficient, but it's a very quick way of just casting structure over that data in the data lake. And what I mean by efficient is if I expand product, okay, those views have created data types like varchar 8000, 8000, 8000, because it's a Parquet file. It's just reading that data type as 8000. Okay, so we've got some big data types there that we can optimize. Let's go back. Well, let's run one of these queries. Okay. There we go. And there's our data that's just in the data lake that's been exported to Parquet. Okay, nice and standard. Let's do it. It should be about 400 rows. Yeah, 417 rows. Right, let's go back to that streaming analytics job. Streaming started successfully. Right. Let's refresh. Okay, we've still got we've still got our events processing. Still sending events to the event hub. Okay, might have to give it a minute or two to start pulling through and loading into the data lake. Okay, we've got some utilization. We've got some things happening. Input events 5.77k, output events 4.63 thousand. There we go, down the bottom there. We've got no errors so far, that's good. Let's go back to Synapse. And let's go to our data lake storage account. Come on, let's see that folder. Yeah, there we go. We've got our web telemetry. So we open that web telemetry folder. And there we go. We've got our, our partitioned folder structure. Event year, event month, the date, the hour, and we've got some Parquet files. Now we set those Parquet files, quite quite liberally in the settings. It was just like the lowest number of rows possible. And the quickest time period ever to get these files generated. Okay, but we can see sort of date modified on some of those, as the files are being written. Okay, there we go. See more Parquet files being created. Now I can, if I just go back to this folder, I can just right click and say select the top 1000 rows. Okay, and I've got my folder path, and I'm gonna tell it that it's Parquet. I've got Delta as well, but we'll look at Delta another day. We apply that, and look, we just got a very, very, let me hide the properties pane, a very basic select top 100 all scripts from the location. If I go to the end, then you can see that the path here, it's essentially just hard coded the year, the month, the date and the hour in the query, because I've just right clicked that folder and asked it to select, and you've got this star which is read all contents, which is a bit, well, in some ways it's flexible, because if there's a folder structure under that, then it will recursively look for anything under that to read. But I would like it just to specify it's looking for Parquet files, but it's trying to be flexible in terms of any further nested folders. Let's run it. And there we go, we've got some results. Okay. Now, if I go back into my select data, I've got my script here, okay, and I've just got a basic select, and I'm going to go to this folder structure. Now, I've got some wildcards in there, because even though there's no other year, month, or date folders in there, this is going to just count everything from all of those folders. So if we have a little look and do a count, and add raw in, that's what I should have done before. There we go, 24,013 rows. So I don't know how quickly it will update those rows based on batching for for Parquet. Let's just run it a few times. It could be that minute minimum time. All right, so while we're waiting for the figures to update, we can have a look at how many rows per file are being generated. Yeah, so I can use this file name function here. Yeah, so I've got file name, and all it does is it just returns the name of the file in the data lake that particular row is coming from. Yeah, and I can use it in an aggregate function. So I can say, you know, go and get me. I haven't put the raw in again, have I? There we go. I'm going to run that. Okay, so we can basically see, you know, for each of those Parquet files, how many rows are in them. Yeah, so have a look at the chart. Yeah, basic. Yeah, at most 2,300 rows, and at the least 1,144. But that's the settings in Streaming Analytics. But we can create a view over that data. Now, I'm gonna keep it simple with just a select all, and let us actually create a view. ldw.vw web telemetry as select all from, and we'll copy the open row set command from up here. What I'll also do is I'll add in some extra columns. Yeah, so this will then be useful when we query to limit what we're actually querying. So you see these wildcards here. So we've got a wildcard for year, month, date and hour. Ignore the Parquet wildcards. That's just looking for any file with .parquet. Now that's position 1, that's 2, that's 3, and that is 4. So what I can do is use a file path command. So I'll say r.filepath, oops, 1 as let's say event year. We've got r.filepath 2 as event month. Oops, a big V there. Let's do it very quickly. We'll do the other two. Boom, boom, like that. Yeah, this is a relaxed live stream as well, so I'm allowed to type SQL. I wouldn't do it in a session. Event year, event month, event date, and event hour. Yeah, and all that file path function is doing is just referencing that wildcard in that location. So let's do a top 10 before I create that view. Run that. Use it as a table, not as a visualization. Okay, so we've got all the data that's contained in that Parquet file, and at the very end we've got the year, the month, the date and the hour from those folders. And if I was using serverless SQL pools to report on data that was being streamed into the data lake, the last thing that I want to do is start writing SQL statements that every time I run is just going to go and process all of the data from all of the folders, right? Won't somebody please think of the data processed? Okay, so actually I'll show you that very quickly. So if I go into monitor, SQL requests. Okay, yeah, you can see for every query that I'm running against serverless SQL pools, I've got this data process metric. Now the data volume is quite small, so minimum 10 meg every time you run a query. So go back into develop. Right, let's create that view. Well, let's get rid of that top 10. Okay. And run that view. Right, so I'll select all from that view. And then I'll use the file path function. So I'll say where, and we know there's only one date in there, right? So we can just say 0330. But if we just wanted the latest hour's worth of data, then obviously we can just do hour, and we probably we can put a date from parts and get the hour out with a get date. But we know that it's UTC time, right? And we're getting our data back. Okay. Now likelihood is, right, I'm not going to select all, right? I'm going to say like event type. I'll say count all as event count from web telemetry. Group by my event type. Group by my event type. Okay, put in basket, browse products. Nobody bought anything yet. Oh, that's pretty disappointing. Let's click the chart. I mean, it is the example data is meant to be quite aggressive in terms of purchasing, because I want to see that funnel in terms of browsing, putting into basket, and purchasing. Okay. And of course, we've got the views from our SQL database. All right. So let's select P dot. Let's have a look at our SQL database, our products. Okay, so P dot name as product name. Let's do let's do count W dot let's have a look at we'll just count the users, event count from our web telemetry view. In a join, yep, we're just joining views together. LDW.VW product P on P dot product ID equals, I'm going to put W there, W dot product ID. Let's group by P dot name. Okay, let's run that. Oops. Do our table. There we go. We've got our event counts. Yeah. We can add in the event type as well and see, who's actually who's browsing. What products are people browsing? What products are people buying? Let's do that. A wonderfully formatted SQL there. Like I said, the stream it's a bit more relaxed. Okay, so we've got products being put into baskets, products being browsed, but that's all streaming in. Okay, so if we go back up here, we'll just do our select count again. So now we're up to 51,000 events that have hit the data lake. Go back into our. There we go. Tons and tons and tons of tiny Parquet files. Right. So I'm going to leave it there. Leave it there. Okay. So we've essentially created an event hub. We've then configured our C# app, the C# app, to send events to that event hub. Okay. So it's just a very basic synthetic web telemetry message. Created a streaming analytics job to go and get that data from that event hub. Yeah. We'd want to do some more advanced transformations with that data as well, and possibly enrich before hitting the data lake. Yeah, even multiple outputs. Yeah, the raw data in the data lake, and some transform data, and some enriched data as well. And then with serverless, because those Parquet files are being generated in that partitioned folder structure here, in the event year, month, date, and hour. I go back into my SQL script. We can then just, well, do what Serverless SQL Pools is designed to do, which is read that data from the data lake. Okay, but we'd want, obviously we want to create a view to, obfuscate the, the folder locations and the data sources. Yeah. And expose those folders in the data lake using this file path function, and we can just go and get the data that we're interested in for that specific hour to kind of reduce the amount of data that we're having to process with each query. So now we've got all our little Parquet files in the data lake. In the next stream, I think we're going to take those Parquet files in a batch process, and we're going to turn that into Delta. Okay, but we're going to do that in the next stream. Okay, so it ended up being again a little bit longer, but yeah, we've seen event hubs, we've seen streaming analytics, and we've seen serverless, just reading that data from the data lake as it's coming in. So next time we'll have a look at transforming that data into the Delta format. Anyway, well, hope you've enjoyed it. I'm kind of liking these more sort of relaxed, let's just code some stuff sessions. If you're enjoying it, let me know, and see if there's anything in here that you want me to go into any other detail in, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye bye.